Hello everyone. So we will continue the life cycle hook. The first thing we'll be doing will be to practically check the disconnect callback, because that was the thing left remaining from the last session. And then we will talk about the life cycle hooks, which life cycle hook to use for which purpose, and what not to do in a particular life cycle hook, because that is a very important interview question. See, everything in lightning web component is an interview question, so it depends on how interviewer are asking and how much your knowledge is on that particular topic. Okay, so without wasting any time, just confirm if you guys are able to see my screen, and uh, I'll open the Lightning Studio and we will start it. So last time we created one Lightning web component, which was the example of lifecycle hook. If I open the account page, so for the other lifecycle hook, even if we do not have anything, we were okay to just create a lightning web component, and we were able to console those. But for the disconnect callback, because we will have to deattach, or you can say remove a particular lightning web component from the DOM of a page, we will have to create two lightning web components. Okay, we will create one parent lightning web component and one child lightning web component, and then we will conditionally hide the child web component. So when we hide that web component, then the disconnect callback will be called on the child web component. So that is what we'll have to do practically. And let me go to Studio and do that. Why did I do Studio? Let me close the first one. Let's open the Studio again. Okay, let's create two Lightning Web component, a separate Lightning Web component for the disconnect callback, and see it from the example. Okay, so I'm going to create a new web component. I'll name it disconnect callback parent. Okay, I want to expose it, and I want it to be on the record page. Okay, this is my component. Let me just put a p tag here and say that this is my parent component. Okay, save it. Now create another web component, and this time name it disconnect callback child. Okay, and save it. Just put that. This is my child component. Okay, child. Okay, simple, very simple, nothing fancy on these two components we did. Let's also open the JS file of both of them. Now, what we need to do is we need to put the child component on the parent component, and we will have to conditionally show it and hide it. Okay, so let me first create a structure for it, and then I'll show you what we are doing. I'll explain you what we are doing. Okay, so first let us put the child component here. Okay, so it is disconnect callback child. Okay, save this. Now, what we are going to do, we will create a button, and on click of that button, when we click it, then we will hide it. Okay, so let us create a button first. And for the button, we have lightning button tag. It will give us everything. Okay, we will just give it a name, whatever you want to give it a name. Variant will be base. And if you want to know more about these tags and all, Salesforce has whole documentation for it. You just write down the name of the tag and Salesforce will give you whole documentation. You can go through in detail about what you want to hide child component. Okay, that will be the label of it. Let us give it a title as well, hide child. So by default, this child will be visible. Okay, remove the HTML tag. Okay, sorry. Let me save it. Okay, so by default, our child will be visible, but when we click on this button, we will be hiding the child. Okay, so we will have to write down a handler for this on the parent.js. Let's go to parent.js and let's create a property here, show child, which will be by default true. But when we click on the button, then we will mark it as false. Okay, and we will save this. So we did not do anything fancy. What we did, we created a parent component. Inside that, we have added our child component, which will by default be visible. Okay, and we'll have to conditionally render it as well. So here we will have to render it like, we will have to apply the conditional rendering. We discussed how conditional rendering work is because we use the if template. Okay, if true, then we will do this. Sorry. Okay. Yeah. So what I was saying, if we will put something like this here, if true, show child. If show child value is true, which we have set here as by default true, if show child value is true, then we will display this child component. But if the value is false, then we will hide it. So when we will hide it, then we will disconnect it from the DOM structure of the page. Okay. So at that time, disconnect callback will be called. Okay. Now on the child component HTML, not on the HTML, on the JavaScript side of the child component, let us write the disconnect callback. Because that is what we want to console. Okay, and we can write console.log disconnect callback on child is called. Okay, let's save this. So now our task is to add this Lightning Web component on the UI and then try to click on the button and see if if in the console we are able to see this console log statement or not. If we are able to see, that means we were able to invoke the disconnected callback, and that is the purpose of this example. Okay, so let's go to our Salesforce screen back and let's refresh this. Let's click on the edit page. And let us add the disconnect callback parent. Okay, child is already inside that, so we need not to do anything. Okay, let's just save this. Go back to the page. Refresh it. And we are now able to see this is the parent component, this is the child component, and this is the button which we have on the parent component. Now let me open the console log side by side and save the and delete whatever we have. Now what I'm going to do, I'll click on this button, and on the click of this button, disconnect callback should be invoked and we should get the console log statement. So let's do this. And the moment we do this, the child components HTML has been removed from the page, and you see disconnect callback on child is called. So at this time, disconnect callback will be invoked, and we are disconnecting a particular Lightning Web component from the HTML, or you can say the DOM of this particular web page. So disconnect callback will be called. Anybody has any doubt on disconnect callback? Yes, hi Manjunath.
Amit,
Hello.
can you give me the like overall why how I mean like I understood this example, but the point is like when in what sequence this disconnected callback of child is getting invoked.
Disconnected, okay, you're asking the see, because this is part of unmounting phase. All the mounting phase has already been done. Page has been rendered. The parent has also been rendered, as well as the child rendered is done. So all the mounting phase is done. Okay, rendered
Hmm.
call is done, and that's where the life cycle will end. Now, if we'll have to remove anything, that will have to be invoked by us. So here on the click of that button, we are invoking the disconnect callback. It will not get invoked automatically. When the rendered callback is called, at that time, the component lifecycle ends. If there is any error on your Lightning Web component, then error callback will be called automatically. But
So
disconnect callback is something which we will have to invoke, because we are disconnecting something. We are purposefully removing something from the page. So this has to be invoked by us. Okay. So when they
so
ask you,
good.
when this disconnect callback will be run, when we when we actually try to remove something from the page. So that is on us. Okay. This is a LWC specific callback method. This is not specific to JavaScript. Salesforce has created it on its own. Okay, and the definition of this has been written inside the Lightning element class. Okay, and this also flows from parent to child. Okay, so parent will be removed and then child will be removed if we are removing both of them. Okay, and
Yeah.
in
So disconnected callback will be done explicitly on a click or any action,
when
correct?
we want this to be removed, not only by click, when we want this to be, let's say, on certain specific event, or we might be using the render method. So render
Hmm.
method will, let's say, is going to display something and going to remove something. So let's say there are two child components, and based on the render method, there is if condition. If this is true, then display child component one. If that is true, then display child component two. Okay. So let's say currently it is meeting the first condition and child component one is getting displayed. But let's say you made a changes on the data, and now when the component reloads, then the data meets the second condition or the else condition. At that time, your second component will be displayed, first will be removed from the page. So it depends on when we want this to be removed. Removing a
Okay.
particular component from page is on us. This will not happen automatically. Okay.
Okay. Can you refresh and show it again here how we have built that?
Yes.
Can you open that console please?
Okay. Let me delete it. Let
Yeah.
me refresh it. It will not remove, because
Okay. Hmm.
we will have to remove it. If we click on it, then this will be called. So as I'm saying, this is a specific to Lightning Web Component callback method. This is not JavaScripts or HTMLs, or you can say normal web standards like cycle. Okay. So if I click on it, then this will be called. If there is any error, let's say if there is any error on our Lightning component, then error callback will be called automatically. Okay.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So this component got invisible, right? Conditionally, it got.
Yeah.
Okay.
If we mark it as false,
Hmm. Yeah, yeah.
if in the parent components JavaScript, if we mark it as false, okay, then also by default child will not be visible. But okay, just a second. Okay, so when we let's mark it as false and see what happens. Okay. Now, let's open the inspector, refresh it. And now you will see that even though child will not be displayed, because component has not been rendered itself, removing it from the page will come later because component is not even the part of the DOM itself. That is why disconnect callback will be not called this time. Disconnect callback will be called when page, or you can say your particular Lightning Web Component is part of the DOM of that particular web page, but then later on you remove it. So when that removal part happens, then the disconnect callback will be called. Okay. So always remember, this callback method will be fired when a component is removed from the DOM. If component is not part of that DOM itself, then there is no need or there is no point of this getting called. Okay. And always remember, these callback methods have been given to you to so that you can have more control over your page. Okay, when that particular thing will happen, when the values will be assigned, when the particular page will be rendered to the page, so that you can change the behavior of your page if you want to do that. Okay, but again, calling Apex inside these, or trying to do very fancy things are not required. Okay, we will talk about this in the next section. Okay, coming to the constructor.
I
And
have one question here.
yes, hi Milin, go ahead.
So disconnected callback is only called when a component is removed. So for my question is, for example, we have one section, right? It's a not separate component. It is a section in the, for example, in parent component. If we are hiding that section,
No,
will that disconnected callback will be called or not?
no.
Okay. So basically, it's just a component level. When we are
Yes,
deleting or removing the component, then only it will get called, right?
yes, you're right.
Okay.
If we are doing conditional rendering within the same component, and if we
Mhm.
remove a particular section, that will not call the disconnect.
Disconnected call.
Because it will
And
not.
what is the real use case to use this disconnected callback?
Again, see, sometimes we want to disconnect based on certain conditions. If
Mhm.
if user, let's say, enters something which is not meeting that criteria and you don't want to display that, you will disconnect it. Okay, you will obviously remove that page from the let's say you have an input, you have a component which is giving some data to another component which is
Okay.
displaying some data. Okay, now
Mhm.
first component you have removed that data, or user has removed all his input. Okay, so in that case
Okay.
there is no sense to display the second component. So the moment you remove the data from the first component, you will have to remove the, or you will have to disconnect the second component from the page, so that user will get the updated data or will not see any data at all. Okay, so
Okay. Got it. Thank you.
it's one disconnection only. Okay, now because this life cycle is very important, let us again go from the beginning, constructors, and then see why do we use constructor, what do we do inside it, and when we do those things. Okay, so somebody was asking the super keyword, like why do we use super keyword and everything. I have created a short video on that. Did anybody see that? No, very bad. Okay.
Yes, like you have asked the question.
Yes, I have asked the question why we'll have to write the super method first. Okay, so again, this is because we will have to write super first because we will have to inherit the property of the parent class. Okay, and this basically is for the inheritance in Lightning Web Component. JavaScript does give you a class-like structure, but JavaScript is not an object-oriented language. This class-like structure in JavaScript is just to make you a bit more comfortable with JavaScript, but don't be misguided by the class. This is not the same class which we use in the our Apex or which we use in the Java, which is an object-oriented class. This class is just the wrapper around the traditional JavaScript, and JavaScript is not an object-oriented language. Okay. Super keyword we use so that we can inherit the property of our parent class. We are extending the Lightning element, which is the parent here, and we want to extend the properties of it. That is why we will have to use the super method first so that we can initialize the constructor of Lightning element class at the first line itself. So that when later on we need to use any of the functionality of Lightning element, we will need not to be worried about it. Okay, we will have everything on our own from the line first. Okay, that is why we use the super method in the first line. First line, remember, if you will not write it in the first line, you will start getting errors. One very major question most of the time interviewer ask here is that can we call Apex in the connect in the constructor itself? Right? Anybody want to answer that?
I think yes, we can.
Yes. If we try to call the Apex in the constructor, that is possible. Okay, but Salesforce does not recommend us to do that because there is no practical benefit of it. Okay, you will your property will only get the data once the whole life cycle hooks are resolved, and because it is asynchronous, you will get the data at the end itself. And Salesforce has given you two ways to get the data from Apex. One is by the wire method and one is by using the imperative call. Okay, and Salesforce take cares of data, if your property changes and everything automatically. So Salesforce has given you preferred way to fetch data from Apex. See, in an interview, they can ask illogical questions, and we will not even call it illogical. They can ask anything. But when it comes to your applications or creating something, it is not about what we can do. It is about what is good for the system. Okay. So let us again do something practically and see if this is possible or not. Okay. So I will explain super again. Don't worry. Just give me some time. Let us do this thing first. Okay. So there is one example we have already created. We will use the same example because there we already have the Apex class and everything. Okay. Which is, I think, account list. Account list is the component which we created last time. And we will try to get the data from the constructor itself. Okay. Okay, let's call the Apex from here and then see if it is working or not. All right.
Yeah.
This is my method name. Let's copy it here. And then let us write the syntax of it. Dot then it gets result, and then we'll have the error dot catch. And I can make the syntax error, so just bear with me. Inside, then we get the result and the error both. So let us see if we get error, then this, and then if we get result, then this, and then if we get error, then again do this. Now inside this, let us assign the property. So this dot. Now we already have accounts, and accounts are getting data via wired method. So let us create another account. Accounts inside constructor. Okay, bit heavy name, but I must have done some error in the decision part, which is okay. We will correct it later. Okay. A result. And let us also define the error. So again, this dot error equals to error or undefined, we can say. Because we are getting inside the result, so error will not be here. We will have to go to the catch part, and inside the catch part, we will define this dot account inside constructor is equals to undefined, and this dot error equals to error. Let us try to save it, and we're calling this method, we've got the result. Let us console this result as well. Console.log. Let us save this. Because we are doing inside the constructor, let us also try to do it inside the connect, or let's do it later. Let's take connected callback later on. We can also call the Apex inside the connected callback as well. Okay. So let us save this. We'll have to make some changes on the HTML as well. So inside the HTML, let's create another template. Okay. And here we will see if true accounts inside constructor, then we will display it. Okay. Again, we will have to use the template because this is a list. So let's use template, and we'll have to use the for each loop. So for each, and for item, let's call it ACC, the way we do it inside the trigger, and then just display it as a line item, the way we are doing in the upper section. Okay. So what we are doing here in the, we are getting the accounts in the wire method, as well as we are getting the accounts inside the constructor, and we will see if it is working or not, or if we are able to get the data or not, or if it is working itself or not. Okay, just a second. Let's say we are showing related context and which is added in the context. Yeah, we will see that. Million. This is your question, right? Okay, let us
Yes.
cover the main topic which we want to cover, and then we will cover the extra things. Okay, so I think this is fine. Let's go to our Salesforce and see if it is Any here? To the okay, sorry. Let me just edit it, and just like the first list, now we should get another list as well. Okay. So now you can see we are able to get the list of account inside the constructor as well. This is the list of account inside the constructor. This is the list of account which we got via the wire method. This is the same list. If we go to inspect and remove everything and refresh it again, see, accounts inside constructor was undefined. Accounts inside connected callback was also undefined. Accounts inside rendered callback was also undefined. And then accounts inside constructor got the data. Okay. Accounts inside rendered callback was still undefined. And then rendered callback was called again, and then it got the data. Okay. So it will get the data even if you try to get the data in constructor, but there is no real benefit. It is not like you will get the data first in constructor. It is an asynchronous call, and it will get the data when the async call is getting resolved. Okay, so constructors should not be used to get the data from Apex. If you want to initialize some data, that is fine, that you should do in the constructor, but it should not be used to get the data from Apex, because there is no real benefit of it. You will get data later on only. Okay, and because Salesforce uses wire method, what the benefit wire method gives you is that when all the see what happens in the cycle is, when constructor will be called, connected callback will be called, wire method will get the undefined in the beginning itself. Okay, and then later on, when all the properties of that wire method is resolved, then the call will be sent to Apex to get the data, and Salesforce handles all those things automatically. So let's say you are sending a property, or let's say you are sending an account name to Apex. Whenever that account name will come or will change, Salesforce will take care of that automatically to resend and you will get the updated data here. Okay, so to get the data from Apex, use the wire method or imperative call if you want more control over it, but do not try to use it inside the constructor or the connected callback. Okay, that is what I want to tell you guys here. Okay, but if for the interview sake, if he is asking, can we call Apex from the constructor, will we be able to get the data? You have seen that you will be able to get the data. Okay, and as we know that rendered callback is flows from child to parent, it will be called again and again if your data changes. Okay, so you will use wire method to get the data from Apex, not the constructor or anything. Okay. Now, then what is the use of constructor? Why do we use constructor then? Whenever you want to initialize something, okay, see, components properties are not ready yet. Okay, so you should not touch the components property, or you should not try to change the structure of your page. Okay, you should not try to change it because those properties are not ready yet. Okay, this again flows from parent to child, and you can't access the child element because your parent itself is not ready. So don't try to add attributes on your host element, or you can say in your page inside the constructor. If you want to see, why do we use constructor even in Apex? To initialize some value. So if you want to initialize some value, that is fine, that you can do in constructor, but don't try to do many fancy things in the constructor, because that will that may lead to an unexpected behavior on your page. Okay. So, sir, as you have called Apex in constructor, so is that imperative method which you use? No, this is not an imperative method. This again is an automated way to call an Apex. whenever your page will load, a call will be sent to Apex. This again is asynchronous. You will get the data once your call or once that asynchronous call is resolved. This is not an imperative way. This is an automated way, and this is not a recommended way. Imperative way is the way when we send on our wish, like when we want to send on a click of a button on a certain action, when we want to send, then we use the imperative call. Otherwise, we use the wire method to do that. And whatever I did here, can we call why should you call a wire method inside the constructor? That will not make any sense to me. If you want to try that, let us do that. I don't think
So
I don't
I
think.
didn't understood here you have used wire method right over there, so we are getting there. And in constructor you have used like dot then and dot catch. So what is that then?
This
I
is
mean,
a different.
without using a wire method, you are calling the apex, right? So,
Yeah, this is directly calling. You are directly calling this Apex method. Okay. The same way you do it in the imperative way, you directly call the method. This is the same. If you want to use, instead of, let's say, when you call it imperatively, that will be inside a particular handler. Here, it is not inside a handler. Instead, it is inside a constructor. That is the only difference. And constructor will be called automatically. That handler will be called when you call that handler, or when you click on a button, or when you click on submit particular thing, then that handler will be called. But constructor will be the first thing which will be called when your page will be loaded. So this will happen automatically. But if you write it in a
okay.
handler, that will not happen automatically. Okay.
Oh, got it.
And whatever we are doing now inside the constructor, the same thing you can do inside the connected callback as well, and you will be able to get the data there as well. Okay. And many times we use connected callback to fetch the data, or listen to events. So connected callback, at the time of connected callback, your elements of your page has been inserted in DOM. Okay. So you can touch those elements. Okay. You can access those elements, but you cannot obviously access the child, because that has not been you can say inserted yet, but you can at least access the parent. Okay. And again, even in the connected callback, it is not a very good idea to set the properties. Okay. And when we cover the getters and setters, I'll tell you why it is not a very good idea to set the properties in the connected callback. We use getters and setters to set the property and get the property, because that is a better way to do that. Okay. But if interviewer is so kind of ask you about, can we set the property in the connected callback or not? So you will say, yes, we can set the property in the connected callback as well. Okay. Now, one other important question is, can we set the properties inside the constructor? Can we set the properties inside the constructor? Anybody want to answer that? Yes, we can set the
Yes.
properties
Yes.
inside the constructor. And in fact, constructor should be used to initialize certain property. Okay, but just don't try to change the page behavior or something like that. Do not try to touch the behavior of the DOM. Okay, because that has not been inserted yet. Okay, so that thing will be bad. And don't try to add such thing like adding attributes on page or something. But can you set the properties or values of properties? Yes, we can. Let's say we have defined a decorator, track decorator, which is an object, and I want to set a default value to it. Okay, I can set the default value directly. But let's say if I have some certain statements, like if this is true, then set the value this as ABC. If that is true, then set the value as XYZ. So then that if else you cannot do directly in the outside of the constructor. So then you can do that thing inside the constructor. Okay, so if you have to initialize the values conditionally, then you can use constructor. In fact, that will be the better way to do instead of doing it directly. Okay, so then you can use the constructor. You can set the
17th line.
sorry.
No, in the 17th line, like under the constructor, we have written super, right? So
Yeah.
can we see that as a property that we have added under constructor?
No, what super means is that you are trying to inherit the properties, or you can say whatever functionalities we get under the lightning element. Okay, so the super statement basically tells you that we are trying to inherit whatever is written in the parent class. Here we are extending the parent class and we want to extend all the properties of this class. So
Right.
for that, this is just nothing but the creating an instance of this class. That's it. Okay.
We are using one property to set that conditional running, so that we can set that in the constructor. The Boolean variable which we are used, right?
Okay.
All right. And
Mohit, one question.
go ahead.
In constructor, I mean, not in constructor, among constructor, connected callback, and wire method,
Mm-hmm.
what is the sequence? I mean, I'm assuming like the sequence is constructor will be a call first,
Mm-hmm.
connected, and then the wire. No. Wire and then the connected. What is that?
Let us see that. Okay. Let us
Hmm.
see that. So we have this example, life cycle hooks. Let us go to that. Let us try to do this practically, because this is also one of the very important questions, and because if we'll not do it practically, then it will be really difficult for us to say with 100% certainty. Okay, so let us do it practically and then we will be seeing. So let us use this example only, account list.js. Instead, just remove these extra things so that our page will not be cluttered. We have constructor, we have connected callback, we have rendered callback, we have disconnected callback, and then we have wire method, right? Okay. Now, what we are doing, we are displaying accounts in every callback. Okay. We are displaying the accounts in every callback. Okay. But when the page will load, this will be undefined, this will be undefined, this will be undefined. Okay. Most of these things will be undefined. Just a second. So let us deploy this page to UI and we'll see the behavior of how it is working. Okay. What happens in reality is constructor will be called and then wire method will get the undefined data in the beginning. Okay, because wire will not get the actual data from Apex, but it will be fired. Okay, it will be fired, but what Salesforce will do in the backend is that it will assign the undefault value to it. Okay, so accounts will become undefined here. Okay, and then connected callback will be called and rendered callback will be called. At this time only, data will be undefined, but then this call to your Apex will get resolved. When this call to Apex will get resolved, because this is an asynchronous call, your system will not wait for whole life cycle hooks to get completed. That is why first constructor will be called and then wire will get undefined in the beginning, because the server call has not been resolved yet, but system will not wait for it and other callback method will also be called then. So connected callback will be called, rendered callback will be called, but later on, when this server call will get resolved and async call will get the data in it, then rendered callback will get called again. And when this gets called again, then at the end, it will get the data in the account. So this will be called multiple times during the life cycle hook. First, in the beginning, later on when it actually gets the data. So this will be called multiple times. Now let us see this practically, if this is the actual behavior or not. Let us go to the page, refresh this, and edit this page. Save this. Let us open the inspector, delete it, refresh it again, and see what happens. Okay. Now you will see first is constructor will be called, data has not been defined because obviously they will be undefined. Then here between this wire method will be called. If you try to use the value of wire method in the connected callback, then you will get undefined. Okay. So here what happens in between constructor and connected callback, that the call to apex will be done and undefined will be assigned to the value of data and value of error. Okay. And then connected callback will be called, then rendered callback will be called. Both will be undefined because data has not been received yet. Here in between data will be received from server. So when the data is received from the server, this rendered callback will be called again because it will re-render the property. It will re-render the property in the page so that it can display the data. So if I conditionally render, if account has data, then display this, otherwise display data not found, then initially it will display data not found, and when thus data will be received from server, then rendered callback will be called again here in this line, and then data will be displayed. This will happen automatically. Okay. So that is the actual flow of it. I have a good link which explain this in detail. I will try to share it with the group so that you guys can go through that in detail. But this is how these life cycle hooks work, and that is how the data flows. Okay. Now, how much time we have? 9:47.
हाय मोहित मोहित
Yeah.
एक डाउट है कि अगर कनेक्टेड कॉलबैक ने बहुत ज्यादा टाइम लिया और सपोज हेवी कोड है कनेक्टेड कॉलबैक में रेंडर्ड कॉलबैक कॉल होने से पहले डेटा आ गया तो पहले डेटा आएगा फिर रेंडर्ड कॉलबैक कॉल होगा तो रेंडर्ड कॉलबैक 2 बार कॉल नहीं होगा
देखो अगर पहले
करेक्ट है
ही आ गया तो रेंडर्ड कॉल बैक उसको रेंडर कर देगा पहली बार में ही, फिर तो कोई इश्यू ही नहीं है।
तो मतलब लाइफ साइकिल अपनी स्पीड से चल रही है एंड जैसे ही डेटा आएगा रेंडर्ड कॉलबैक विल केटर दैट
दोबारा कॉल होगा और वो डेटा को फिर से रिफ्रेश करके डिस्प्ले करेगा जो भी डेटा उसको मिलेगा। ठीक है। अगर आपने रेंडर्ड कॉलबैक में कुछ लिखा हुआ है कि हाँ अगर डेटा है तो ये करो, नहीं आया है तो ये करो, अगर कुछ कंडीशंस लिखी हुई है तो वो कंडीशंस डिपेंडिंग ऑन डेटा एग्जीक्यूट होंगी आपकी। ठीक है।
ओके
और देखो मैं बता रहा हूँ आप लोग को रियल रियल टाइम में क्या होता है ना कि आप लोग बहुत ज्यादा इन कॉल बैक से छेड़खानी नहीं करते हो। आप लोग अपना नॉर्मल LWC कोड लिखते हो, उसमें हैंडलर्स होते हैं, उसमें इवेंट्स होती हैं, उसमें पेरेंट टू चाइल्ड कम्युनिकेशन होता है। बहुत ज्यादा हम लोग जो लाइफ साइकिल हुक्स होते हैं उनसे छेड़खानी नहीं करते हैं, टू बी वेरी फ्रैंक। मतलब मैं आपको रियल टाइम प्रोजेक्ट्स का बता रहा हूँ, बहुत ज्यादा हम लोग को कॉल बैक फंक्शंस में बहुत ज्यादा छेड़खानी करने की जरूरत पड़ती नहीं है। ठीक है। बट कभी कभी पढ़ती है, तो जब पढ़ती है तो हम लोग को फ्लो बस पता होना चाहिए। बट इंटरव्यू के पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से ये सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट चीज है, क्योंकि जो चीज रियल लाइफ में कम यूज होती है ना, इंटरव्यू में वो ज्यादा पूछी जाती है, क्योंकि वहां पे लोगों के हाथ साफ नहीं होते, वहां पे लोग अनकंफर्टेबल होते हैं। दैट इज वाई ये इंटरव्यू के पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से ज्यादा इंपॉर्टेंट है। रियल टाइम में जब आप LWC लिखोगे ना, तो आपका HTML पेज होगा, उसमें बटन्स होंगी, उसमें एक्शंस होंगे, उनमें इवेंट परफॉर्म होंगे। उन इवेंट्स के हैंडलर आपके LWC में जावास्क्रिप्ट कोड में बने होंगे, उन पे आप एक्शंस परफॉर्म करोगे। बहुत ही रेयर केस में आप जा करके कुछ कंस्ट्रक्टर में छेड़ोगे या कनेक्टेड कॉलबैक में छेड़ोगे। ठीक है। तो उतना ज्यादा लोड नहीं लेना है। फ्लो आपको पता होना चाहिए कि किसमें क्या होता है, कौन कब कॉल होता है एंड कब हमें एक्चुअल में डेटा मिलता है, कौन पेरेंट से चाइल्ड फ्लो करता है, कौन चाइल्ड से पेरेंट फ्लो करता है। ठीक है, ये सब पता होना चाहिए। अब इसमें एक चीज बची हुई है, दैट इज रेंडर मैथड। ओके, रेंडर मैथड इज नॉट अ लाइफ साइकिल हुक बट काइंड ऑफ प्रोटेक्टेड मैथड इन बिटवीन कनेक्टेड कॉलबैक एंड रेंडर्ड कॉलबैक। ओके, this can be called before connected callback or after the connected callback. This basically is to update the UI conditionally. ठीक है, तो यहाँ पे एक क्वेश्चन बनता है कि when to use render method versus when to use conditional rendering, like we use like if true or if false. So that is conditional rendering, and when to use render method. तो रेंडर मेथड में आपको पहले प्रैक्टिकली बताऊंगा, देन इट विल मेक सेंस बिकॉज यू नो कंडीशनल रेंडरिंग, आपने देखा है इफ ट्रू और इफ फॉल्स वाला क्या है, बट यू हैव टू सी द रेंडर मेथड फर्स्ट, देन आई विल बी एक्सप्लेनिंग दिस आंसर। ओके, but always remember from the interview point of view, disconnect callback and error callbacks are LWC specific callback method. They are not JavaScript methods. But other lifecycle hooks are JavaScript or web specific callback method. But disconnect callback and error callbacks are LWC specific. So Salesforce has actually built them. Okay. ठीक है. Right. Let me stop the